She should not have said it like that, but she did. "I didn't go to that coffee shop because of you, Jake." Those were the words. And once they left her mouth, I felt something inside me crack. We had been laughing 10 minutes earlier. Copper was asleep by my boots. The Chevy's hood was open. Life felt steady. Safe. Then she looked at me like she was about to confess to a crime. "I said yes to that date for a reason," she whispered. "And it wasn't because I thought I'd meet someone like you." I tried to smile, tried to act like it didn't matter, but it did. Because for months I told everyone that the best thing that ever happened to me started as a joke between friends. Now I was realizing it didn't. She hadn't gone there hoping to fall in love. She had gone there to escape something, and I had no idea what that meant for us. So tell me this. If the girl you're building a future with admits she didn't come into your life for the reasons you believed, would you still trust what you're feeling? Because that's where my story really begins. Not at the coffee shop, not on the hiking trail, but the night I found out why she really showed up, and why part of me was terrified she might leave the same way. I used to hate blind dates. That's the truth. My friends had been pushing me for months. Especially Marcus. He wouldn't let it go. Said he knew someone perfect for me. Said I was too stubborn for my own good. I only said yes because I wanted him to shut up. That's it. No big romantic leap. No destiny. Just annoyance. Sunday at 3. Lakeview Coffee. Denver. I almost didn't go. I was in my garage, elbows deep in the brake lines of my old Chevy. That truck had been my therapy for a year. Since my dad passed. Since life felt heavier than it should. Fixing things made sense. People didn't. But my alarm went off, and I went. I walked into that coffee shop expecting a prank. Instead, I saw her. And everything got quiet in my head. Sophie. Light blue dress. Hair tied back. Calm eyes. Like she already knew something I didn't. When she smiled at me, it didn't feel staged. Didn't feel forced. It felt easy. We talked for 3 hours. 3. About cars. About her job at the vet clinic. About her dog, Copper. About small towns and parents who expected you to stay. There was no awkward silence, no checking our phones, no pretending. Just two people talking like we'd been paused mid-conversation years ago and finally hit play. When she hugged me goodbye, it lasted a second longer than normal. And I remember thinking, if this is what blind dates feel like, I've been wrong my whole life. What I didn't know, she almost didn't show up either, but not for the reason I thought. Our second date was a hike. She was already there when I arrived, like she'd been waiting longer than 15 minutes. She moved through the trail like it was hers. At the lookout point, she asked why I liked fixing cars. I told her the truth. I like taking broken things and making them whole. She stared at me when I said that, really stared, like she was measuring something. "You're the kind of man who fixes things," she said softly. I laughed it off, but she didn't. That was the first time I should have realized. She wasn't just noticing me, she was evaluating me. And I didn't ask why. Because I didn't want to ruin something that felt this good. We kept dating. Farmers markets, movie nights. Her dog deciding I belonged to him. She'd sit in my garage while I worked on the Chevy, hand me tools, ask questions, watch me like I was building more than an engine. Every time I looked up, she was studying me, not in a creepy way, in a searching way. Like she was trying to decide if I was safe. I told myself it was just how she was. Thoughtful. Careful. Then the phone call came. Her dad. Heart attack. Wyoming. She had to leave. At the airport, she held me tight. Too tight, like she was bracing herself. "I don't know how long I'll be gone," she said. "I'll wait." I told her. I meant it. Distance didn't scare me. Losing her did. But here's the part. One didn't understand back then. When she asked if I would really wait, she wasn't asking casually. She needed to know. Because when she first agreed to that date, she wasn't looking for love. She was looking for proof. Proof that men like her ex didn't define the world. Proof that not every relationship ends in control and silence. Proof that she could choose differently. And I didn't know any of that. Not yet. All I knew was that I missed her. That weeks without her felt wrong. That when she cried on the phone saying she felt torn between her family in Denver, I didn't hesitate. I'm not going anywhere, I told her, and I wasn't. I drove 10 hours to Wyoming 2 weeks later, met her parents, shook her father's hand, helped fix a broken fence without being asked, stayed up late on the porch under more stars than I'd ever seen. She watched me that weekend the same way she watched me in the garage, measuring, listening, testing, and when I left, her dad pulled me aside. "She's careful," he said quietly. "She has reasons to be." I didn't ask what he meant. I should have, because when she finally came back to Denver 6 weeks later, something had shifted. She loved me. I could feel it. But there was a wall still standing somewhere behind her eyes. And tonight, the night she told me she didn't go to that coffee shop because of me, I finally understood why. So now I'm sitting here. Hands still smelling like engine oil. Heart pounding harder than it did the first time she hugged me. Because I need to know something. If the foundation of your love story starts with a reason you never knew about, does that make it weaker or does it make it stronger? She's about to tell me the full truth. And I'm not sure I'm ready for it. She didn't look away this time. That's how I knew it was serious. Sophie has this habit when something is small. She smiles, shrugs, changes the subject. But tonight, she stayed still. Her hands were flat on her knees, her eyes locked on mine. "I need to tell you everything," she said. Not dramatic, not loud, just steady, and somehow that scared me more. I nodded. "Okay." She took a breath that shook at the end. When Rachel pushed me to go on that date, I had just ended something. I felt my jaw tighten. She noticed. "It wasn't recent," she added quickly. "It had been over for months, but I wasn't okay yet." I didn't interrupt. I didn't trust myself to. "He wasn't violent," she said softly, "at least not in a way that leaves bruises." That sentence landed heavy. "He just controlled everything. Where I went, who I talked to, what I wore, even how I laughed." She let out a breath that almost sounded like a broken laugh. I didn't even realize how small I had gotten until I left. Quote, "Something inside me burned. Not jealousy, not anger at her, just anger that someone had made her feel small. I stayed longer than I should have," she continued, "because he always apologized, always promised to change, and I believed him, every time." I clenched my hands together so she wouldn't see them shake. When it finally ended, I told myself I was done with relationships, done trusting my judgment. She swallowed. "And then Rachel kept talking about you." I waited. "She said you were steady, that you worked with your hands, that you took care of your mom, that you weren't flashy or loud, that you fixed things." I felt something twist in my chest. "So you said yes because of that?" She nodded slowly. "I didn't say yes because I was excited to meet you." There it was again, that sting. I said yes because I needed to see if men like you were real. The words hung between us. I didn't speak, because I didn't know how to feel. She wasn't saying she used me, she wasn't saying she didn't care, but she wasn't saying she came for me either. I needed to prove something to myself, she said. That I wasn't broken. That I didn't attract the wrong kind of man every time. That safe didn't mean boring. That kind didn't mean weak. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "And what did you decide?" I asked quietly. Her eyes softened. I decided 15 minutes into coffee that I was in trouble. That almost made me smile. Almost. Because you weren't trying to impress me. You weren't trying to dominate the conversation. You listened. You asked questions. You didn't interrupt. She shifted closer. You didn't make me feel small. That hit harder than anything else. But something still bothered me. "So what am I?" I asked. "Proof? A test you passed?" Her face fell immediately. "No, God, no." She reached for my hands but paused halfway, like she wasn't sure she had the right. "You were never a test, Jake. she said. The date was, not you. I stared at the floor for a second. Let that settle. She continued, voice softer now. I walked into that coffee shop expecting to confirm my fears. I was ready to find red flags. I was ready to leave after 30 minutes. She gave a small, shaky smile. And then you started talking about that stupid Chevy. I huffed out a short laugh despite myself. And the way you described fixing it like it mattered. Like it had history. Like broken things deserved patience. She looked at me carefully. I realized I didn't just want proof anymore. She leaned closer. I wanted you. Silence stretched, not uncomfortable, but heavy. You should have told me sooner, I said finally. She nodded. I know. Why didn't you? Her fingers twisted together. Because I was scared that if you knew I didn't show up for romance, you'd think what we built wasn't real. I looked at her, really looked at her. There were no walls in her eyes now, just fear and hope. Was it real? I asked. Her voice didn't shake this time. Yes. No hesitation, no pause, every laugh. Every hike, every night on that balcony, every time you drove to Wyoming, that wasn't proof. That was love. My chest tightened. But you were watching me, I said slowly, evaluating. She didn't deny it. I was learning how to trust again. That answer disarmed me. I sat back. Ran a hand through my hair. Part of me felt foolish, like I had been the only one falling blindly. But another part understood. I never wanted to be your rebound, I admitted quietly. You weren't. She said immediately. I never wanted to be compared to some guy who hurt you. You aren't. Her voice was firm now. He taught me what I won't accept. You showed me what I deserve. That landed differently, not as a comparison, as contrast. And still, something in me needed more. When did it stop being about proof? I asked. She didn't even think about it. Wyoming. I blinked. When you showed up, 10 hours, no hesitation, no pressure. You didn't complain about the drive. You didn't make it about how hard distance was for you. Her eyes filled slightly. You just fixed a fence with my dad and held my hand at night. She smiled softly. That's when it stopped being about fear. My throat tightened. That's when it became about forever. The word forever hit me square in the chest because I had been thinking it, but I hadn't said it, not yet. She leaned forward slowly. Jake, I didn't go to that coffee shop looking for love. A small pause. I walked out hoping I'd get to keep it. That did it. That cracked whatever doubt was left in me. But I needed to say one more thing. You don't ever have to test me again, I said. Her eyes widened slightly. I'm not here to fix what someone else broke. I squeezed her hands gently. I'm here because I choose you. She exhaled like she'd been holding that breath for months. And then she did something small, something quiet. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny silver bolt. From my Chevy, the one I'd replaced weeks ago. You dropped this in the driveway the night before I left for Wyoming, she said softly. I kept it. I stared at it. It was nothing, just metal, but she held it like it mattered. Why? I asked. She smiled. Because you fix things, she whispered. And I wanted a reminder of the man who doesn't throw broken pieces away. My chest burned, not from pain, from something deeper. I pulled her into me. And this time when I held her, there was no question, no doubt, just warmth. But as she rested her head against my chest, a quiet thought slipped into my mind. If she needed proof once, would she ever need it again? I didn't ask the question out loud, but it stayed there, quiet, heavy. If she needed proof once, would she need it again? The next few weeks were good. Too good. The kind of good that almost makes you nervous. She came by the garage more often. Sat on the same stool. Watched me work like she always did. Only now, when I caught her staring, she didn't look away. She'd just smile, like she wasn't measuring anymore, like she had already decided. But something had changed inside me. Before her confession, I never questioned where I stood. Now I noticed small things. When her phone buzzed, and she turned it face down. When she went quiet after certain calls. When she hesitated before introducing me to someone new, nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just small pauses. And once doubt moves in, it doesn't need much space. One Thursday night, we were cooking at her place. Copper was under my feet, hoping something would fall. Her phone rang. She froze. Just for a second, I saw it. "Unknown number," she muttered. She let it ring. I tried to keep my tone light. "Spam call?" Quote. "Probably." But she didn't sound convinced. It rang again. This time she stepped into the bedroom to answer it. My chest tightened in a way I didn't like. I told myself I was being stupid. Insecure, but I couldn't ignore the way her voice changed behind that door. Lower, controlled, careful. I didn't hear words, just tone. And I hated that I noticed. When she came back out, her face was calm, too calm. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just something from the past." That was all she said. Something from the past. It felt like a shadow stepped into the room with us. I didn't push, because I told myself I trusted her. But trust is funny. It doesn't disappear in one big explosion. It erodes in quiet seconds. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I stared at the ceiling. Her breathing was steady against my chest. Mine wasn't. I didn't care that she had a past. We all do. What bothered me was that it felt unfinished, unresolved, and I wasn't sure if I was stepping into a love story or into someone else's aftermath. The next day, I almost asked her. Almost. But she looked happy, light, and I didn't want to drag us backward, so I waited. 3 days later, it happened again. Unknown number. Same freeze. This time she declined it immediately. I didn't hide my reaction. She saw it. "Jake," she started. I stayed quiet. She walked over and sat in front of me. "It's him." There it was, the word we hadn't said yet. Him. My jaw tightened. "He's been trying to reach me since I came back to Denver," she said calmly. "New numbers, emails." I blocked the rest. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. Her eyes filled slightly. "Because I didn't want him to take up space in something good." That answer hit 2 ways, protective and secretive. "What does he want?" I asked. "He says he wants closure." I let out a humorless laugh. Closure is what people ask for when they can't stand losing control. She looked at me carefully. "You're not wrong." Silence stretched. I forced myself to stay steady. "Are you going to respond?" She shook her head immediately. "No." "Are you scared?" A pause. "Not scared," she said honestly. "Just tired." That I understood, but something still sat wrong. "Do you want me to handle it?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes sharpened instantly. "No." Firm, clear. "I don't need you to fight my battles." That stung, not because she was wrong, but because part of me wanted to be the hero, the fixer. She reached for my hand. "I need you to stand with me, not in front of me." That sentence landed deep. I nodded slowly. "Okay." She exhaled softly. "I'm not that girl anymore, Jake. The one who stayed too long. The one who apologized for things she didn't do." Her grip tightened. "I chose you. Not because I was testing you. Not because I needed proof." Her voice steadied. "I chose you because I feel safe, and strong, and seen." I believed her. I did. But later that night, when we were sitting on the balcony under those same string lights, her phone buzzed again. She didn't look at it. She just turned it face down and leaned into me like she was proving something. And I hated that my mind whispered, "If you're so sure, why does this still exist?" 2 days later, it escalated. He showed up. Not at her apartment, at her clinic. She called me from the parking lot, her voice steady, but tight. "He's here," she said. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Where?" "Outside. He's just standing by his truck." "Do you want me there?" I asked. A pause. "Yes." That was all I needed. I drove faster than I should have. When I pulled in, I saw him immediately. Tall, clean cut, hands in his pockets like he owned the ground. He wasn't yelling, wasn't causing a scene. He was calm. And somehow that made it worse. Sophie stood near the clinic door, back straight, arms crossed. She didn't look small. Not anymore. I parked and walked over. Slow. Measured. He glanced at me, then back at her. "So this is him?" he asked casually. Sophie didn't answer. I stepped beside her. Not in front. Beside. "You need to leave," she said firmly. He smiled slightly. "You really moved on that fast?" She didn't flinch. "I moved on the day I left." Quote. His jaw tightened. For a split second, I saw it, the crack in his control. "You owe me a conversation," he said quietly. "No," she replied. "I don't." Silence. Cars passing. Wind brushing against us. He looked at me again, like he was sizing me up. I didn't react, didn't puff my chest, didn't threaten. Because this wasn't about him. It was about her. And she didn't look scared. She looked finished. "I'm not coming back," she said clearly. "Ever." That was the moment. The real one. Not the coffee shop, not Wyoming. This. He studied her face, then mine, and finally he gave a short nod, not respectful, just defeated. And he walked away. No drama, no shouting, just the sound of his truck starting. Sophie didn't move until he was gone. Then her shoulders dropped. Not weak. Just relieved. I turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded. "Yes." And she meant it. She looked at me differently that day, not evaluating, not testing. Just certain. But as we drove home, a new thought settled into my chest. She chose me, in front of him, in front of her past, out loud. And that should have erased every doubt. So why did a part of me still wonder, if he never showed up, would she have ever told me the full truth? I didn't ask her that question right away, but it followed me home. It sat with me while I worked on the Chevy. It lingered when she laughed at something on TV. It whispered when she fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. If he never showed up, would she have told me everything? A week passed after the clinic. No more calls. No more unknown numbers. Life went back to normal, at least on the surface. Sophie seemed lighter, like a weight had finally dropped. She talked more about the future again. About trips. About maybe moving somewhere with a yard so Copper could run. About that drive up highway one she always wanted to take. But I noticed something else too. She watched me when I didn't know she was watching. Not like before. Not evaluating, not testing, more like she was memorizing. Like she was afraid something could still disappear. One night, she came to the garage after work. I was under the hood, grease on my hands, music low in the background. She didn't say anything when she walked in, just stood there, quiet. When I looked up, she had that look again, the serious one. "We need to talk," she said. My stomach dropped. I wiped my hands slowly. "Okay." She took a few steps closer. "I've been thinking about what happened at the clinic." I stayed still. "I don't want you to ever feel like I kept something from you." There it was. So she had noticed too. "I didn't feel kept in the dark," I said carefully. She tilted her head. "That's not true." Silence. She stepped closer until she was right in front of me. "You felt it." The distance. The hesitation. I didn't deny it, because she was right. I wasn't hiding him, she continued. I was hiding the part of me that felt embarrassed. That caught me off guard. "Embarrassed?" She nodded. "For staying too long, for ignoring red flags, for letting someone treat me like I was small." Her voice didn't shake, but it carried weight. "I didn't want you to see that version of me." I leaned back against the workbench. "Sophie, everyone has a version of themselves they're not proud of." She shook her head gently. This wasn't about pride. She reached into her bag and pulled something out. A thin leather notebook. Worn at the edges, she held it between us like it mattered. "I started writing in this after I left him," she said quietly. "It's where I promised myself I'd never shrink again." She opened it, flipped to the first page, didn't hand it to me, just read. "I will never stay somewhere that makes me question my worth." Her voice was steady. "I will never confuse control with love." She closed it softly. "When Rachel told me about you, I brought this to the coffee shop." That hit me. "You brought that on our first date?" She nodded. I almost left after 10 minutes. I was looking for reasons, looking for signs I should walk away. I felt something tighten in my chest. But then you started talking about your dad. I blinked. What about him? You didn't pretend you were okay. You didn't try to be tough. You just said you missed him. She swallowed. That's when I realized you weren't performing. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't testing you, Jake, she continued. I was protecting myself. A small pause. And somewhere between the second coffee and that stupid hike, I forgot to be guarded. Her eyes softened. You made it easy. The garage felt quieter. Even the music seemed to fade. I should have told you sooner, she said. Maybe, I admitted. She nodded. But if I'm honest, I was scared you'd think you were just part of my healing. I held her gaze. And was I? She didn't hesitate. You were the beginning of something new, not a bandage. That mattered, more than she probably knew. She stepped closer and placed the notebook on the workbench. I don't need this anymore, she said. I frowned. That's not something you throw away. She smiled softly. I'm not throwing it away. She slid it toward me. I'm choosing something better. My throat tightened. What are you saying? She took a breath. I got offered a promotion at the clinic. That surprised me. That's amazing. It is, she agreed, but it means committing to Denver long term. My heart skipped. Okay. She searched my face. I turned down a job offer in Wyoming this morning. I froze. You didn't tell me. I just did. Her eyes held mine. They wanted me back, full-time, closer to my parents, more money. Silence. And you said no? She nodded. Yes. Why? She stepped even closer. Because I don't want to build a life halfway. Quote. My chest tightened. I want roots, she said, and I want them here. A small pause. With you. The air left my lungs slowly. You're sure? I asked quietly. She didn't smile, didn't joke. I'm not choosing Denver because it's easier. Her voice was firm now. I'm choosing us. There it was. Not proof, not evaluation. Choice. Clear. Deliberate. I looked at the notebook on the table, then back at her. That's a big decision, I said carefully. I know. No pressure from me? She shook her head immediately. No pressure. No guilt? None. I studied her face. There was no fear there. No hesitation. Just certainty. I don't want you to give up something important for me, I said. I'm not giving up, she replied softly. I'm deciding. She reached for my hands. And I don't need you to fix this, or prove anything, or compete with my past. Her thumb brushed over my knuckles. I just need you to stay. The simplicity of that request hit harder than anything dramatic ever could. Just stay. No heroics. No grand gestures. Just presence. I swallowed. I can do that. She smiled. Not the cautious one, not the testing one, the full one, the one from the coffee shop. And then she did something small. She picked up the tiny silver bolt from the workbench, the one she'd kept. She placed it back in my palm. I kept this when I was unsure, she said quietly, because I needed a reminder. Her fingers closed my hand around it. I don't need reminders anymore. And for the first time since her confession, I felt steady again. But that night, lying next to her, watching her breathe in the dark, a different question crept in. If she was choosing me fully now, was I ready to choose her in a way that changed everything? I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was afraid, because I knew something had shifted. She had chosen me, not out of fear, not out of proof, not out of healing. She chose me when she had options, and that kind of choice, it demands something back. The next morning, I woke up before her. She was curled toward my side of the bed, one hand resting where my chest had been. Like even in sleep, she was reaching. I lay there watching her for a minute, and a quiet truth settled in. I didn't want to just stay. I wanted to build. That afternoon, I drove out to storage, to the place where I kept the last box of my dad's things. I hadn't opened it in months, not because I didn't want to, because I wasn't ready, but suddenly I was. Inside that box was his old watch. Scratched face. Worn leather strap. Still ticking. He used to tell me something when I was a kid. If you're going to show up for something, show up fully. No half steps. No halfway love. I held that watch in my palm for a long time. Then I made a decision. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just steady. That evening, I asked Sophie to meet me at the garage. She walked in wearing jeans and one of my old shirts she borrowed. "You look serious," she said with a small smile. "I am." She leaned against the workbench, waiting. I didn't kneel, didn't pull out a ring. Not yet. I held up my dad's watch instead. She recognized it. "You told me about that," she said softly. I nodded. He wore it every day of his life. I stepped closer, and the last time I saw him in the hospital, he made me promise something. Her eyes softened. He told me not to waste time pretending I wasn't sure. Silence. Just the hum of the overhead light. "I'm sure, Sophie." Her breath caught. "I don't want you halfway in my life. I don't want temporary plans." I swallowed. "I want to build something that lasts." Her eyes filled instantly. "I'm not asking you to marry me tonight," I said gently. "But I am asking you something." She stepped closer. "What?" "Move in with me." The words landed between us. Real. Solid. Her hands trembled slightly. "That's not small," she whispered. "I know." I took a breath. "I don't want to date you like we're waiting for something to go wrong." My voice stayed calm. "I want to wake up next to you and build a life on purpose." Silence stretched. Not tense, just heavy with meaning. She stepped forward until there was no space left between us. "You're not asking this because I turned down Wyoming," she said carefully. "No." "Not because of what happened with him?" "No." "Then why?" Quote. I held her face gently. "Because every time you walk out the door, I miss you before you're even gone." That broke her. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "I was going to ask you the same thing next month," she admitted. I laughed softly. "Guess I beat you to it." She nodded. "Yes." Just that. Yes. No hesitation, no testing, no proof. Just choice. We didn't celebrate loudly, didn't post about it, didn't call everyone. It felt too sacred for noise. The following week, we started moving her things. Books first. Then clothes. Then Copper's bed. The first night she officially stayed, we ordered pizza and sat on the floor because we hadn't rearranged the furniture yet. She leaned against my shoulder. "This feels different," she whispered. "Good different?" I asked. She nodded. "Permanent different." I liked that. Permanent. Later that night, as we were unpacking boxes, she found something in one of them. A small framed photo. My dad and me beside the Chevy when I first brought it home. She held it carefully. "You're building more than a truck," she said softly. I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "You're building a life that looks like him, but healthier." That hit deep. Because my parents loved each other, but they didn't always know how to say it. They just stayed. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes it wasn't. Sophie set the photo on the shelf, right beside the couch. Not hidden, not stored, displayed. That night, we lay in bed with Copper wedged between us, her head on my chest. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to fall apart. But life doesn't test you only once. 3 weeks after she moved in, the ranch called again. Not an emergency. Not a crisis. An offer. Her parents had found long-term help. Things were stable. Her dad was walking without assistance. And they wanted to gift her something. Half ownership of the land. Her name officially added. It was security. Legacy. Roots. She sat at the kitchen table with the phone in her hand long after the call ended. "That's huge," I said carefully. "It is." Her eyes were distant. "They're giving me a future there." I stayed quiet, because this wasn't something I could fix, or guide, or influence. "I don't want to leave," she said finally, "but it feels wrong to say no." I sat across from her. "You don't have to decide tonight." She shook her head slowly. It's not about tonight. Her eyes met mine. It's about where I build. Silence. Then she said something that made my heart stop. If I choose here, I'm choosing you over land that's been in my family for 3 generations. That wasn't small. That wasn't casual. That was sacrifice no one asked for. And I felt the weight of it immediately. You don't owe me that, I said. I know. Then don't decide because of me. She studied me carefully. I'm not. Her voice was calm now. I already chose you when I turned down Wyoming. A small pause. This is just making it official. And that's when I realized something. Love isn't about who shows up first, or who needed proof. It's about who keeps choosing, even when there's something easier. She looked at me across that table. No fear, no hesitation, just certainty. And I knew. The next step wasn't just moving in. It was bigger. And I wasn't waiting another month. I didn't wait another month. I didn't wait for perfect timing, or perfect lighting, or perfect words. Because my dad's watch was still ticking on the shelf, and every second felt like a reminder. If you're going to show up fully. 3 nights after the ranch call, I told Sophie I needed help in the garage. She walked in, wiping her hands on a towel. What did you break? She teased. I smiled. Nothing. The Chevy sat there between us, finished, polished, whole. I hadn't told her I stayed up late every night that week getting it done. Not for the truck. For this. She stopped when she noticed the hood was closed. The lights were softer than usual, and the engine wasn't the center of attention. I was. You're scaring me a little, she said quietly. I walked over and opened the driver's side door. Come here. She stepped closer. Inside, resting on the seat, was a small wooden box. Nothing flashy, just simple, like us. Her breath caught. Jake. I didn't kneel yet. I took her hands first, because this wasn't about surprise. It was about certainty. You said you don't want to build halfway. She nodded slowly. I don't either. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my dad's watch. I strapped it around my wrist. Then I finally lowered myself down. Not dramatic, just steady. I didn't go to that coffee shop looking for forever, I said quietly. A small smile touched her lips through the tears forming in her eyes. Neither did I, she whispered, but I walked out knowing I didn't want anyone else. My voice didn't shake. I don't care why you showed up that day. I opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple band, 1 small diamond, nothing loud, just real. I care that you stayed. Tears slid down her cheeks. I care that you chose me when it was hard. When it cost something, when you had other paths. I swallowed, and I'm choosing you the same way. Silence filled the garage, thick, sacred. Sophie, will you marry me? She didn't hesitate, not a second. Yes. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was certain. I slid the ring onto her finger. It fit, like it had been waiting. She pulled me up before I could say anything else and kissed me. Not rushed, not desperate, just deep. Like sealing something permanent. When we finally pulled apart, she laughed softly through her tears. You know, she said, Rachel is never going to let us forget this started as a blind date. I smiled. Let her. Because this didn't feel blind anymore. It felt intentional. That night, we sat on the hood of the Chevy with Copper asleep at our feet. The ring caught the garage light every time she moved her hand. She kept looking at it, not like it was expensive, like it was proof of something bigger. You weren't my test, she said quietly. You weren't my fix. She intertwined her fingers with mine. You were my choice. I squeezed her hand gently. And you were never my rebound. She leaned her head on my shoulder. The air felt different, not heavier, not lighter, just steady. Weeks later, we drove that Chevy out to Wyoming. Not because she had to choose, but because she wanted to show them what she built. Her dad met us at the gate, walking on his own, stronger. He looked at her hand first, then at me. And he smiled. You stayed, he said simply. I nodded. Yes, sir. He shook my hand, firm, certain, At dinner that night, Sophie stood up and told them everything. Not about the ex. Not about fear. About the coffee shop. About the hike. About the fence I fixed without being asked. About the way I stood beside her at the clinic. She didn't cry when she told it. She glowed. Later, under that same wide Wyoming sky, she pulled me aside. "I thought I went to that coffee shop to prove something," she admitted softly. I smiled. "What did you end up proving?" She looked up at the stars. "That safe doesn't mean boring." She turned to me. "It means lasting." And in that moment, I understood something that took me months to see. She didn't show up for love. She showed up for clarity. And she stayed for devotion. When we drove back to Denver, the mountains fading in the mirror, she rested her hand on my thigh, the ring cool against my skin. "You know what the best part is?" she asked. "What?" "You never tried to rescue me." I smiled. "You never needed rescuing." She squeezed my hand. "I just needed someone who wouldn't leave." I glanced at her. "I'm not going anywhere." And this time, it wasn't a promise made in fear, or distance, or uncertainty. It was a fact. Because sometimes love doesn't start with fireworks. Sometimes it starts with doubt, with caution, with someone walking into a coffee shop looking for proof, and walking out with a future instead. She said yes to the date, but she stayed for forever, and that changed everything.